CNBC TV 18, celebrating 16 years of business leadership.
Welcome back. Well, we've been in conversation with Jyotivardhan Jaipuria as well as Sudarshan Sukhani on taking stock. So, Sudarshan, let's continue with a couple of picks that you're recommending. You spoke about Cera Sanitary Ware, but the other one on your list is NBCC. That one has been a real outperformer. What are you projecting on the technicals?
Yes, it's been an outperformer, and after that it had a normal correction, and I say normal because it was not deep, it was just something that should be expected after a big bout of up moves. That correction is now ending with another trading base that is giving us a bullish pattern. So it does appear that sooner or later it should break out and go and test its earlier highs, and that should be quite impressive for position traders. So you buy it, hold it. Again, these are not day trades, not next week trades, and we don't need them. They're something that you can put your money in and wait for a few weeks and hopefully get something more out of it. NBCC has an attractive pattern, has a very good pedigree behind it, a very big rally, and the chances are that it should do well in the first few months of next year.
Jyoti, this week we saw a couple of these telecom names like Bharti and Idea rally close to about 6 and 5% respectively. Is that a pocket which looks attractive to you?
I'm worried about that pocket because I think next year we'll have this competition coming through from Reliance Jio, and to that extent I think there'll be competitive pressure at least when the launch happens. So I would be worried about that sector. I would think that stocks are not going to perform too well over the next 6 months.
Okay. Jyoti, how would you approach a stock such as Sun Pharma? We got all the details of the warning letter this week, and it reacted positively because there were no new or negative surprises that came in from the warning letter. Your sense in terms of how Sun Pharma would possibly perform in 2016 and compare it to a Dr. Reddy's, which is also facing US FDA issues?
Yeah, so instead of let me just take it to the whole sector. Essentially what we are seeing in the sector is this year we've seen a lot of issues starting with FDA, and so people are, though the pharma sector has been probably the best performing sector this year, the FDA issues have been much more than what we've seen in the past. So to that extent, wherever we get this new FDA and the general sense becomes that this is something more deep-rooted, then I think investors will get wary of that company and say, okay, we should probably wait till the problems are solved. But where we get FDA issues and then the general sense becomes that, okay, this is something which is manageable and can be sorted out, investors will continue to play those sort of companies. So it is a sector which investors have liked. It's done very well over the last 5 years, over this year also, because in spite of all the problems, a lot of these companies have just continued to grow earnings quarter after quarter after quarter.
Sudarshan, we've not often heard you recommend Gitex Garment. Why has it made it to the buy list?
Well, I don't recommend mid-caps often, so all the four have made it to the buy list because you were talking about Christmas cheer throughout the last 2 days, and mid-caps will outperform the larger market next year also. That seems to be a very likely scenario. So why not go and look at attractive mid-caps? Gitex Garments has been the same pattern, a very sharp run-up, and so many of these mid-caps have run up in 2015. After that run-up, it had a very decent correction. The corrections are not deep enough to cause concern, but just enough to let off some steam and bring them back to normal or revert to mean. Now it's making a base, and that base is taking a bullish pattern, the shape of a bullish pattern. It's just broken out today, and that's good news because it's reaffirming that some kind of an up move has started. A good quality company, good quality charts, a bullish breakout, so we go and buy it. So, the three stocks we so far discussed are all position trades which we should hold for a few weeks to really get the benefits out of that investment.
Okay. Jyoti, one of the big themes for this week was what was happening with the entire defense space and the talks between India and Russia and the possible defense deals that could come through. We already heard about Reliance Defence signing a deal with a Russian company. The likes of Pipavav Defence was very strong in today's trading session. Your sense in terms of whether the fundamentals justify the stock prices that we're seeing, and would you be a buyer?
So again, if you look at a theme, what we are seeing in defense is two things. One is there's definite movement in terms of order flow happening, and second is what we are seeing is the Indian companies are being favored. So which is like a bit of change, because so far it was like there were orders which used to go mostly to international companies. So as a theme over the next few years, defense will definitely be one of the important sectors where the Indian companies are going to do well. Companies which are positioned to get defense orders would do well. So, it's not just the Moscow trip, but it is just a trend and a theme that this government is playing out. So I think definitely companies which are tuned into defense will do well as a pack.
Jyoti, consumption is visible in the auto sectors, whether it's two-wheelers or even CV sales have showed some momentum in the last few months at least. Is that the space you would bet on, at least for the early part of 2016?
Yeah, so I like consumption. I think urban consumption will do better than rural consumption in the early part of 2016 because, one is we'll have the pay commission impact coming through, so that will help urban more than rural. Second is interest rates are coming down. So both of these things are going to help urban more than rural. And I think that theme will play out. Hopefully, my view is that we've had two bad monsoons, so we'll not have a third bad monsoon, and to that extent, probably in the second half of next year, rural will partly make a comeback also.
Okay. Sudarshan, coming to you for one of your last mid-cap picks for today, EIH. Why do you like the stock?
Well, EIH it's been doing nothing for years, not months. So a stock that goes into a huddle or a trading range for many years and then wakes up attracts attention. Now, there is some news behind it, and then just 2 months ago, 1.5 months ago, there was a big spike up in prices, mainly because of, say, some kind of a news event. And that spike up in prices has been maintained. The stock is now moving sideways, but it hasn't given way. It hasn't given way to coming down again. So, a large multi-year base which breaks out and then adds more, say, value by price spikes, tells us that slow and steadily this stock is going up. It's not really a high beta play, but for investors and traders who are looking to make more money than the market, it's likely to be a market outperformer.
Okay, thank you, Sudarshan, for spreading the Christmas cheer and giving us the Santa picks. But considering next week's expiry and generally banks are the big movers, what's your sense about the key levels that we should watch for in the Bank Nifty and any trade that you'd watch, and in particular on Axis Bank, because that rebounded close to about 4.5% this week?
Well, the Bank Nifty itself is a buying opportunity only above 16,800, and it needs to sustain above that level for a short-term buy to come about. That we'll have to see on Monday. For me, the bank is not giving very attractive, the Nifty Bank is not giving attractive signals, and while Axis Bank has rallied, I would be very afraid of buying into any of the large banks as a short-term trader.
Okay. And Jyoti, how would you approach PSU as well as private banks in 2016? Which ones would you pick? The financial stability report that came out this week was quite somber on asset quality.
Yeah, I would still be sticking to the private sector banks, so very, very consensus, because I think there's still time before we get into the public sector banks. Public sector banks will be a play where the economy really has picked up. And that's why probably, you'll have one trade in the public sector banks.
Okay, on that note, we're going to wrap up this edition of Taking Stock. Thanks for watching and wish you a good weekend.
CNBC TV 18, celebrating 16 years of business leadership.